kiss for you.
Alright, today we're going to be looking at the 10 best hidden gems of 2025. I did the first one of these videos back last year. People seem to really like it, so I'm doing it again here. A couple of things to note before we get started. These are in notoriety order from 10 to 1. Basically, the first couple, 10, 9, 8, are going to be ones you may have heard before, or may be aware of, or may have gotten a little bit more traction than some other ones. And as we go down farther the list, they'll get lesser known, lesser reviewed, that kind of stuff. Also, these are hidden gems, which means that you're not going to see stuff like Ball Pit or RV There Yet, or other kind of breakout hits that we've seen. You're not going to see Where Winds Meet or anything like that, because those games have blown up and done very well for themselves, have a lot of notoriety, have a lot of people playing them right. These are really hidden gems, things that not a lot of people have necessarily looked at or seen. Because this year also is so vast in the amount of gems that have come out, I decided to do some honorable mentions. So the way that the formatting here is going to work is you'll see in the bottom left the name, the number, the name of the game, the number, the price, and the platforms that the game is on at the bottom left. And so I guess we'll start here with some quick honorable mentions. The game you're seeing on screen now is called DNA, or Duet Night Abyss. It is a free-to-play Warframe-like game that came out a couple months back that I wanted to shout out because I think it does some interesting things in terms of its storytelling and writing and like world building that I think definitely deserves to have people look at it and be interested in it and definitely following it closely. Even though I don't think a lot of the other elements of the game necessarily work that well in terms of like its combat and its animations are pretty weak. But I think that standout in its writing and its world building really does help the game out and helps carry it forward in a lot of ways. The other thing about this game is that while it may look like a gacha game, they have removed all the gacha other than cosmetic gacha from the game. So characters and weapons and things you can just grind for. You do not have to pay for it. So that's kind of the unique thing there for DNA. The next honorable mention here is a game that came out recently from a big publisher and developer, Level 5, and that is Inazuma Victory Road. Inazuma 11 Victory Road is the first one of these games since I believe 2013 or 2011, one of the two, on the 3DS. And I believe that one also was maybe like a Japan exclusive. So it's been a very long time since one of these games has come out. And this one specifically is, I would describe it, if you played like Final Fantasy X's Blitzball, similar to that. Also reminds me of like Mario Strikers. So if you played a Mario Strikers and you played like a Final Fantasy X Blitzball or any other combination of those systems, I think that's a pretty good way to describe this game. This game really focuses on the fluidity of the gameplay, the options that you have, attacking and defending, and just kind of that fun factor that a lot of Mario sports games tend to have. And the one thing that kind of stood out to me about this game is that it has a ton of variety of content, not only a full-blown story mode, but also like a Chronicle, like World of Light style mode where you can collect a bunch of characters. Has a full-on battle arena, tournament style mode, like a career mode, if you will, on top of online multiplayer and everything like that. So there's a lot here in this package, which makes sense considering it had been stuck in development hell for 10 years pretty much. So it does make sense that there's a lot here, but it's just definitely one that you should absolutely be checking out as our next honorable mention. The third one I want to highlight here is Supraworld. So Superland, the previous version of this game, launched before the pandemic, I believe, like 2019 or so. It was maybe like a couple guys, maybe one person at the start, and it was primarily a sandbox puzzle platformer that got a lot of notoriety for its puzzles and the way it was kind of designing itself. You can see its inspiration in things like Grounded, for instance, and some other games that eventually took inspiration from it. And it is a fantastical toy-focused sandbox platformer style game where you're trying to solve puzzles and figure out where stuff is and find the secrets and all that stuff. And the sequel came out a couple weeks back at Supraworld. I believe it's in early access, although it may have come out by the time you're watching this. And this game is, again, more of the same thing, but it is a lot more involved in terms of its sandbox elements and how it's showcasing, what it's doing and the cool things you can do with it, and just the variety of sandbox interactions you can have is expanded in this game. And so I absolutely think if you like puzzle games, or you like even just like platformer Metroidvanias to some capacity, that you are going to quite enjoy that game. We have two more here for honorable mentions. Ambrosia Sky. This game is, I believe, the earliest one list, coming out 3 days ago or so as the time of recording, and that one is a Dead Space inspired. I would describe it as like a Dead Space and No Man's Sky combination, where it has that like crafting, survival, collecting materials thing of No Man's Sky, plus the like atmospheric horror elements of Dead Space. And it really, as you can see, it really accentuates things like its art style, as well as some of the narrative elements that it's trying to portray there. So while I haven't personally played this one, I have seen a lot of positive buzz around it, and I've seen people, talking about it and very interested, especially because of its art style. So I definitely recommend checking that out if you have any interest in like Dead Space or anything like that. And the final honorable mention here we have is Shujinkou. So this was originally going to be a main staple, but then it kind of had some weird things happen with its review process, so it got taken out of that consideration. But this is a very interesting DRPG, dungeon RPG, in the style of like Etrian Odyssey or the other options like Undernauts and stuff like that. But this is actually focused on learning. So it was quite interesting to see the reviews for this game because they had it very highly rated. And as you dig into it, apparently there were some issues with like how the reviews were counted and what it qualified as. You could consider this, if you want to, like an edutainment game, and the idea that it's one of its purposes is to help you learn Japanese and what it means and that kind of stuff. But there is a full-blown dungeon RPG here, so if you like things like Etrian Odyssey or other games like that, then I would definitely recommend this one. I'd also recommend it on Switch because you can actually buy it piecemeal there. Instead of having to spend the full $60 up front, you can kind of piecemeal it and get half and half. So you can like figure out if you actually like the game or not before spending all the money on it. But I'd recommend it. It does seem to have a very interesting art style and a lot going on beyond its kind of educational stuff. So with that out of the way, the honorable mentions, as I mentioned there, we'll get on to the actual full list with number 10. All right, for number 10, we're looking at Trails in the Sky First Chapter. This is technically the most popular game here because it did get very good reviews. It had people playing it, had people discussing it more so than you would think. However, it did not reach nearly the same level of success as, say, the Digimon game that came out a couple months later, right? So in terms of JRPGs and RPGs, definitely Trails in the Sky First Chapter is one you should be checking out if you like pretty much any JRPGs. For the most part, is a fantastic remake of the first game, and the hardest part of the series is obviously figuring out where to start, and oftentimes the start is kind of hard to determine because the English releases for these games have been kind of all over the place in terms of what they include and how to access them. So this is a fresh start. You can start with this game, no previous background needed, and it really is a fantastic JRPG with, I would say, unique elements, including the way its craft and art system works, the music quality, the way the story and the world building kind of progresses, and just the fluidity of a lot of its systems, right? For the most part, it is a seamless open zone game where, like, for the zone parts of it, you're not frequently going to hit loading screens or any kind of thing like that. And so it just has a very unique feeling, even being a remake that is quite different compared to like stuff like Xenoblade or stuff like Persona or even stuff like Final Fantasy. It has a very unique feeling to it and its world and characters that I think any fans of any of those games would absolutely want to pay attention to. And again, I mentioned things like the music. The music really works well, and you can also switch between a variety of ones: the original music, the new arranged music, and then the music that was part of the couple of like specific version releases, deluxe editions and things like that. So that's very nice. There's a good amount of settings and things you can change to it. So it really is a fully featured game and a fully featured, I would say, rendition of what people liked about the game, and you can see that reflected in things like the reviews. It had a very high 91 review score, making it the highest rated JRPG of the year next to Clair Obscur, so that was very highly praised. And I highlight it here because, again, while it was popular, it did not get nearly the level of success that something like the Digimon game, getting like 70,000 concurrent players or whatever, that kind of thing. It definitely had notoriety to it, but it was something that, definitely fell under the radar from a general consensus, broadly because it's a remake of a older game and from a series that a lot of people see as pretty impenetrable. So, for number 9, we have Ender Magnolia. This is a game that has notoriety mainly because its previous game, the Ender Lilies game, had very high praise on it. lauded as one of the better or best indie Metroidvanias that you can play. It had a very unique art style, interesting story, music, all that stuff, and the sequel was even higher rated, mainly because of its score by a very prominent Japanese like pop band, I guess, like metal band, pop band, that kind of thing, as well as its visual style, its improvements to the gameplay, and overall it's just aesthetics that led it to a very similar kind of notoriety as something like Hollow Knight did back in the day. And people were very much praising the game. And I thought I wanted to highlight it here because it came out sort of at the beginning of the year, and so could have definitely fallen off a lot of people's radars here. It is, as I mentioned, primarily a Metroidvania, but there is some interesting mechanics in terms of how the upgrade system works. The difficulty tuning is quite interesting. I guess you call this like accessibility. There's a lot of different options to increase and decrease. The need for you to do certain attacks and certain abilities, the scaling of enemy health and that kind of stuff, what access to abilities you have, that kind of thing that I think is quite unique in the genre in terms of like scaling difficulties and stuff. So I thought that was pretty cool. On top of just the way that the game presents itself, there's a lot of cool presentation elements in terms of how it works with the camera and how it allows you to do puzzles and things that I think is quite unique in the genre that is often very focused on its whole map structure, right? There's very, I guess, convenient and quality of life elements, like the ability to see if you've cleared a location or not, what percentage of that location you've cleared, if there's any hidden things in that, right? Just some very nice features that a lot of Metroidvania should have that this kind of takes with it. As well as I believe it has the snapshot system from Prince of Persia Lost Crown, where you can like take a picture of something you're looking at and stamp it to a location, right? So there's a lot of things like that I think are definitely standout features, but overall in general it is your relatively typical Metroidvania stuff with more of a focus on like the story element and the music element maybe as compared to some other ones. But you should absolutely be checking it out if you like things like Hollow Knight, if you like Dead Cells or anything like that. Alright, for number 8, we're looking at Chaos Zero Nightmare. This is a game I talked about and did a full new player review on if you want to check that video out. This is a very interesting Slay the Spire or Darkest Dungeon style, I guess, deck building roguelike, and its main sort of benefit or unique factor is its art style, the way it uses its deck building variety with its character system in a similar way to, like, I would say, like Monster Train or some other games that have like classes to them do. And really its deck building and its quality of its roguelike elements and the save data system really exemplify that. I'm not going to go into too much detail on all that. You can check the review if you want more info on that, but basically it's a system where once you complete your roguelike runs, you can take that system data and use it for other aspects, so you have really strong characters, and you can use those characters to effectively build the perfect team, right? So think like in Slay the Spire, if you beat a run, you were able to like use that data and use that character, combine it with other data from other characters, and create like a super team, right? It's that kind of thing. So I think stuff like that works really well. Again, the art style, the way that its animations and stuff work, it's very high quality. And the fact that, this is a unique thing, but it's a mobile game, right? Obviously, as you can probably tell. And it really works as a mobile game. Oftentimes, these gacha games try and be so big and so much stuff, and they forget that if you're just a good mobile game and designed for the platform you're trying to be on, you end up being a lot more successful. So I think if you like stuff like Slay the Spire, also if you like stuff, especially like Darkest Dungeon, there's a lot of elements in there in terms of like the horror elements, as well as like the status effects and trauma effects are similar to stuff like Darkest Dungeon when you get like status ailments and things like that. So there's a lot there. There's also a lot of content in the game, just in terms of like how progression works and how difficulty scaling works, that I think makes it really interesting. And so overall, if you're looking for a Slay the Spire game to play on your phone that maybe isn't Slay the Spire, I would absolutely recommend checking this game out. I think anyone that likes those kind of games is absolutely going to like this game. And the other good thing, obviously, because it is a gacha, but you don't need to spend any money on it. The characters you get from just normal playing the game are very good and very versatile because of that save data system. It also does mean, inherently there's some balance issues, obviously, because if your save data gets crazy and too good, then you can be walloping stuff, or if it scaling-wise doesn't get as powerful as you like it, then it kind of doesn't work as well. But overall, I think the unique elements of the game and the way that three-person tag team system works is really exemplary. And so obviously it's free. You can download it wherever, compared to most of the other games here that are paid. So I think this one definitely is just worth checking out if you're interested in these kind of games. All right, next up for number 7, we're looking at Robot Wars Y. This is a very interesting game, not least of which because any screenshot you look at this game will look like a visual novel only, and it looks like it doesn't have any gameplay or anything. That is not the case, and it's unfortunate that the marketing shows it that way. This game is actually a Fire Emblem style game, very specifically with mechs. So if you like Fire Emblem or you like mech games, or tactics games like Gears Tactics, that kind of stuff, I think you'll really enjoy this kind of game. Its primary gameplay involves, relatively standard tactics or RTS gameplay. Setting up your characters, using their powers, that kind of stuff. But what I think really makes it unique is in the speed that the battles take place in, and the kind of quickness that you can have with them. It actually reminds me of like the 13 Sentinels, like that kind of game, the RTS part of it. Because it's a lot of like moving really quickly and being able to intercept targets with other targets, being able to like stash guys inside of a tower and use that kind of thing, similar to like Advanced Wars. So there's a lot of elements from a bunch of different games, but what really kind of sends it over the edge is the unique animations you often get for a lot of these elements, attacking, defending, special moves, that kind of stuff. It really adds a level of polish that you don't often expect in a lot of these games, right? Or maybe a lot of like cinematics and stuff you don't often expect. And there's also a lot of upgrades and things that are surprising. It's not just a purely tactics game like Advanced Wars. It is more of a Fire Emblem style. You can upgrade your guys, upgrade your mechs, upgrade your skills that you're using, change your tactics and that kind of stuff. And it's a very involved process, but it's also one that I think adds a lot of depth to it. Rather than just being a very simple tactics game, it is a lot more involved. It is more RPG tactics and more progression based, which I think is very nice. Obviously, because there is still a lot of visual novel elements, this is not strictly a tactics game. You are going to have a lot of story and dialogue and characters and things, but I will say, as someone that doesn't really talk about story a ton on the channel, I am enjoying the story. I do think the characters are somewhat interesting, even if it is a little hard to parse what's going on, because this is like the 10th Robot Wars game, right? But I do think this is actually a decent jumping in point, not necessarily for story reasons, but for just like gameplay polish reasons and how it operates. I think it was very easy to understand and get into, which is not something often you get if you just jump into the middle of a series. And I can absolutely see why it got the high ratings it did from users that are enjoying the game. So I definitely want to highlight that one here to say, hey, if you're interested in tactics games at all, you should be checking this game out, even regardless of what maybe the screenshots on Steam are showcasing, right? For number 6, we're looking at Shuten Order. This is a fascinating game. It's on here because the director, I believe, or the producer of the game is a guy that worked on the 100 Heroes game that I haven't highlighted yet on the channel, but is definitely one I've been looking into and playing. That is the Danganronpa X, Danganronpa X, like Valkyria Chronicles, X, like the Somnium Files, 9 Doors, that kind of guy. And they combined their genius powers to make the 100 Heroes game, and then one of the Danganronpa guys went on quickly after to direct and release this game. Shuten Order is an interesting one because it's billed as kind of a multi-genre experience, if you will. It goes through a variety of different things, from like Ace Attorney detective work stuff to more strict like dating sim elements, to some other visual novel puzzle solving things, escape room style stuff, and there's a couple other genres in there. But its main purpose and main kind of gimmick is that it switches between those 5 things in each case that you do, right? The gameplay elements change. So if you want the game it's most similar to, I would say Ace Attorney, the Ace Attorney games, the cases, how they're set up, what you need to do in the cases. It's a similar style there, but instead of every single case being a different legal thing, relatively similar setup, these are vastly different gameplay experiences. That obviously didn't jive with a lot of people. That was something that people liked, obviously, but it had middling reviews. It was like 73 or 74 or something like that, and people didn't seem to as much appreciate those elements. But if you are interested in stuff like Ace Attorney, I would say give it a shot. If you are interested in previous works by the Danganronpa developers and you like kind of their storytelling stuff, there's a lot of things like that in this game as well. And so I think if you just are interested in kind of like the unique art style and storytelling with some Ace Attorney gameplay systems, you're going to very much like the game. I don't believe it's like a must-play or anything compared to like 100 Heroes, which is why maybe it definitely didn't get nearly as much notoriety or push, but I think it's absolutely worth highlighting. especially considering it was basically a shadow drop. We knew about it, and then like 2 months later it released. So that was very cool, and it definitely fell under the radar because of that. So if you want to check that out, you can there, and we'll move on to number 5. Taking a look at number 5, Soul Cesto. This is a game similar to one that you may have seen on Apple Arcade that later released onto normal storefronts. It's called Grindstone. It's a similar, I'm going to say match 3 style game. Its main idea was that you can like combine a bunch of guys in a row to do damage to an element. You do damage, you do enough challenges, and you're able to leave while trying to avoid damage. This is a similar aspect where you have different lanes you can attack through, and you have to try and get your guys to destroy enough of the places to be able to move forward while avoiding the ones that give you damage, on top of the other rogue-like elements in terms of like making sure that you got, you know, your benefits, your buffs, any keys, unlocking chests, that kind of stuff, various characters, right? So it's that kind of thing. Obviously, its art style, as you can see, is the main selling point of the game. It's kind of randomness and addictive slot machine-esque gameplay. It is definitely something that people enjoyed about it. It's randomness, but also its ability to be very overpowered. Like you can just destroy and demolish rows at some point, right? So it's that, and it's just really the unique aspect of that kind of gameplay system where, like, yes, it's been done in things like Grindstone, but even then it was a lot more like match based. Like, oh, you have to combine a bunch of these guys in order to do damage. This one's a lot more like, hey, figure out where you want to do. You'll go to a random spot, kill it. But if you time things well, right, if you get your roguelike items and stuff in place, you're able to really go through some stuff. And there's like boss battles and things. So it's a very unique game. I would say, again, it's more similar to stuff like Grindstone if you played that, or the match games with a little bit more intensity in terms of risk and reward. So if you like that kind of stuff, then you can definitely check this game out. I believe it's also pretty cheap. It's like $10 in early access, which does mean it's on Steam only, I believe, currently. But it is also getting updated frequently, and when it eventually comes out, I do believe it's going to be on a lot more platforms. So you can check that out if you want, and we'll move on to number 4. Number 4 is a card tactics game called Battlesuit Aces. You may have heard about this game, at least a little bit, because it had a bunch of art designers from previous popular works, but overall I think it went very much under the radar because it just launched in a very crowded time. This is I guess I would describe it as a card game, like a puzzle card game. Stylistically, card game-wise, I think it's similar to like Marvel Snap. Interestingly enough, even though you actually do damage in this game, it's a similar lane-based structure where you're trying to line up different cards in certain places to get bonuses and then be able to attack the opponent in those places, while also doing some like external base building things, similar to something like, you know, this War of Mine or other kind of I'm not sure what to call those kind of games, like I guess base management games. So you have your like little ship there, you can upgrade stuff, XCOM like, I guess. And you can go out and do the battles, collect resources by doing those battles to upgrade cards and get certain buffs there. And then the actual card game is similar to like Marvel Snap in a way, where you're trying to like use the different lanes, buff your guys in those lanes, and then use it to attack and beat the other opponent. And I think really what makes the game stand out is the fluidity of how that combat works and how quick it is to understand what's happening and how easy it is to play, as well as the card art and the art in general being quite high quality, the music, all that stuff, right? And I think it really just went under the radar because obviously it came out in a crowded time, and it was also, you know, it's a card game, so visually speaking, it's not necessarily the most exciting thing in the world, but people that have played this game have very much enjoyed it and enjoyed going through the process of it and what it, you know, expands into in terms of the story and stuff like that. So I'd absolutely recommend checking it out if you enjoy, again, games. I would say even games like XCOM or games like this War of Mine, or even card games, Marvel Snap, a little bit of Hearthstone in there, right? And it's very nice. I don't believe there's any multiplayer, although I could be wrong about that. I don't believe there's any like multiplayer. It's a single player card game, so you're not going to be like battling against other people. But it is definitely something that I think you should check out if you like card games, and this is one that I think a lot of people definitely missed. So moving on to number 3, the top 3 here. So top 3, I have to give number 3 to a game I talked about on a Just Gems that a lot of people watched, which I was very happy about. That is Voidbreaker. This is another roguelike. I believe this is our 3rd roguelike for the most part on the channel. I'm trying to not have as many roguelikes. I believe this is only the third one. I've tried to keep the list relatively balanced, but there was a lot of roguelikes. So Chaos Zero Nightmare isn't fully a roguelike. There is other stuff, but Soul Cesto is, Voidbreaker primarily is, right? So I did try and keep it varied here, but this is a roguelike. It's a sci-fi roguelike, primarily made by one person, the person that did Entropy Center as well, which was a Portal-like game that also went very under the radar. But Voidbreakers is strictly a sci-fi movement shooter roguelike. I would describe it, as I did in that video, as like the telekinesis powers of Control plus like the movement of Doom, right? And maybe a little bit of the Returnal bullet hell style sci-fi things in there. But really, it's your standard kind of roguelike setup, except you have sci-fi guns and you have these cool modifications you can do to things, and you have like destruction elements and bullet hell stuff. It's a very cool game. You can check the Just Gems I did on it for more info about it, but it was really a game that I saw on a trailer. I believe it was like a sizzle reel on one of the trailers, like Summer Games Fest, and I thought it looked interesting, and no one else commented on it. I saw a bunch of people reacting to that list. Basically, no one batted an eye at Voidbreaker here. I thought it was cool because it was like, damn, this is a, like, talk about marathon style. This is a marathon style feeling sci-fi game that looked like it had a lot of quality in terms of what the weapon mods can do, right, and that kind of stuff. It was like, oh damn, right, it looked very clean, it sounded great, and so I was definitely interested in checking it out. I found it very good for what it's worth, even though if it's, there's some issues with it, which I talk about in the video, but overall I found it very interesting and very engaging, and something you should absolutely be checking out if you like things like Returnal or Doom Eternal. Or even Control, for that matter. There's a lot of like Control, the house kind of elements to this game. So you should have to be checking it out, and we'll move on to number 2. Number 2 is The Drifter. This is a narrative point-and-click adventure game similar to what Double Fine has been doing, or even earlier to what like the what's it called, the Sword games, the Broken Sword games. Stuff like that. So if you like Broken Sword or you like what Double Fine has done in the past, you are going to very much enjoy The Drifter. It is a neo-noir detective spy thriller style point-and-click adventure game. For the most part, you're going to be going around investigating, talking to people, that kind of stuff, with very nice pixel art and some interesting music and sort of motif choices in the game. And that's pretty much it, right? It's fantastic. I don't believe it's too long. I think it's about 5 or 6 hours, but it's just a very nice game, very breezy, very quick, very just interesting in its style and what it's doing. Also, if you like Ghost Trick, I believe the Capcom game that got recently ported, I believe if you like stuff like that, you are going to enjoy this game for what it is. As you can see, the kind of movement that it has, the feeling and the atmosphere. A lot of this game is built on atmosphere and that 80s, for lack of a better term, noir vibe, 50s, sorry, noir, 50 and 80s, neon streets, that kind of stuff. You're going to quite enjoy this game, and this got basically no one. Like, it had good reviews, but it got very little engagement on like Steam and stuff, and very little people playing it, so it absolutely should be highlighted if you like those games. We don't get a lot of them, which is why I struggle to remember Broken Sword, that just got like a very large remaster. So if you like those kind of games, I think you'll absolutely love The Drifter, and it is definitely a highlight for people that enjoy those kind of things. So moving on, we'll look at the number 1 hidden gem of 2025. So the number 1 hidden gem of 2025 is a game that almost no one has heard about. It's called Luto. This is a game that also reviewed quite well, but went under the radar because it is primarily a horror-focused walking sim, or a walking sim-focused horror game, right? And a lot of people do not like these kind of games. They kind of write them off or whatever else. And there is, this game and The Drifter are similar in terms of, it's a very low impact gameplay. But I think the atmosphere, the storytelling, and just the visual elements and experience of this game really put it above the edge. And it is a game that you should absolutely be checking out if you enjoy things like What Remains of Edith Finch, Firewatch, any of the Chinese room games that they did, Still Wakes the Deep, right? This is similar to that. It's about 4 or 5 hours long. It's not super long, but it just gives you that same experience that those games did in terms of the atmosphere, in terms of the setting that they were telling, the story, the visual, not visual effects, but the feeling that this is a game versus a movie. Like, you want to be experiencing and feeling and interacting in this kind of way in this setting rather than just watching it, right? You really want to be feeling, the wind and the noises and the kind of the scared or the horror elements of this game. and I think it absolutely deserves the spot of number one here because of how under the radar this game went and how little people seem to pay attention to these kind of games. So you should absolutely be checking it out. And hopefully throughout this entire list, I was able to provide a decent balance between roguelikes and narrative games, and card games and action games and various things like that you would be interested in checking out either through the honorable mentions or through the main list here. And if you like this kind of stuff and want to see more of these things on the channel, want to see one of these next year, make sure to subscribe, comment down below your thoughts, like the video, and I'll see everyone in the next video.